Hello, everyone. My name is Annette. I am the Business Liaison Librarian here at Barrington Area Library. And I wanted to take a moment and highlight some of the different business databases that I've found especially useful and that you have access to through our library subscriptions. This video will be focusing on one database in particular called ReferenceUSA. This is a database that I use quite frequently because it has a lot of different fabulous capabilities that I find useful in terms of creating marketing lists, but also handling a lot of research about different businesses within our area and beyond. In addition to that, Reference USA also has several other features that I find immensely useful. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and take a look at that database. So if you haven't used Reference USA before, you'll actually find all of the different databases that the library subscribes to here in the Databases tab. So we can go ahead and click on that. And you'll notice we do have our full breakdown of the different databases to which we subscribe to, and they're broken down by category here. And alternatively, you can also see them all listed by title. But for our purposes, we're going to go ahead and launch into the business and careers category. So click on that, and this will actually give you a breakdown of the different databases we have access to that focus more so on different businesses as well as job seeker resources. So you'll see there are several listed here. There's also a brief description regarding each database listed here as well. And as mentioned today in particular, we're going to be looking at Reference USA. So if you head down towards the bottom of the list, you'll see it mentioned. So once you find it, you can go ahead and click on Reference USA, and it'll go ahead and bump us over into a login screen. So you will see that it's going to require your library card number. So I'm going to go ahead and take a moment and sign in with my card number. So at this point, I've just logged in with my library card number. So that is the full card number that you'll see on the back of your Barrington area library card. You can go ahead and enter it with no spaces and click on the login button, and it'll take you over to the screen that I'm using at the moment. And this screen will give you a nice overview of some of the different lookup tools that Reference USA has. So primarily in terms of my work, I tend to rely upon it pretty heavily for the US businesses directory. And as mentioned, there are so many capabilities within this database, but the US business section of it is one that I find to be particularly robust. You could see that there is a listing of over 57 million businesses here, including some recently closed businesses, but they really do a fabulous job of keeping their information very much up to date. They also do very well with including new businesses. So the database will also go ahead and vet and start to include some newer businesses that appear in the area. Beyond our Barrington area, you could also research a wide variety of businesses throughout the nation. You can see in the database, they also start to trickle into Canadian businesses as well. So if you have use for that, you can also feel free to explore that further. But we'll go ahead and take a moment and look at some of the different capabilities here, beginning with this US businesses option. So I'll go ahead and click on US businesses, and now you'll see once you click on the US business database portion of Reference USA, you'll see this screen here, which is the quick search tab. So if you come here looking for specific information, whether it's a company name or a certain individual working within a company, you can certainly include that information and begin your search that way. But there's also an advanced search feature, which is the one that I rely upon the most. And you'll notice though, within the US businesses database, essentially you have access to a lot of information, and there are a lot of different opportunities for research here. You can certainly find any competitors within your industry here. One of the neat features here also is the option to review different company profiles. So this could be information as simple as a company location or something more complex in terms of researching the industry further or that particular company further. In addition to that, within company profiles, you can also see a variety of different ratings. You'll also have access to contact information for a variety of executives. You can see some of their names listed and who does what, kind of their role within the company. That is also included within the company profiles. Beyond that, you do have, as I mentioned, that opportunity for advanced searching, and really building lists is one of the key types of output here. So when I come into this database and do my research and filter through the results, one of the key takeaways for me is creating a list based upon that advanced search tool. Or if you are, say, someone who is creating a marketing list, that's also a really nice feature to tap into within the ReferenceUSA database. So I mentioned I tend to use advanced search. So we'll go ahead and take a look at that. So once you click on that advanced search tab, you'll see there are far more different filters than we initially had in that quick search feature. And by the way, if you do decide to revert back to quick search, you can still see it listed as a tab here. So if advanced search is a little too much at the moment and it gives you too many parameters, you can certainly feel free to go back to quick search if that works better for you. But here, the key takeaway is that you have all these additional search filters and features to work with. And you'll see, as I mentioned, ReferenceUSA has over 15 million different records, as we see here in the record count tool. So essentially, our job here is to try to filter that down to a more manageable number. Now, with the record counts, when you wind up exporting records, ReferenceUSA does limit you to 350 records per export. So essentially, once I whittle this number down to something more manageable, if it's 350 and under, I can export that all in one go, all in one Excel spreadsheet, for example, or all in one email to myself or to someone else I'd like to share this information with. If you do wind up going over that number, you can still work with that. The only thing is that you would wind up breaking your results into maybe two or more. So if I cross that 350 threshold and say I wind up with 450 records, I could download that initial set of 350 and then come back and download the remaining number beyond that. So I would essentially have two Excel spreadsheets I'd be working with. So it is still manageable to work with and still navigable. So in terms of actually starting your search, I do want to point out some of these search parameters here, and we'll go ahead and do an example search so you can see what that process looks like. So here we do have the option to search by company name. We still have that option to search with executive information, including executive name, their title, gender, ethnicity, so on. Also, we have the option to search by business type. So if you don't happen to know the name of a company or the name of a certain executive working within the company, you could also search by the keyword. So we have those SIC and NICS codes and the industry as well. So either of these options can help you get access to that company or to get access to a certain target group of companies or industries to focus on. Of course, geography is a filter that is pretty popular as well, especially if you're looking to work with someone maybe local to you or maybe in a certain state or certain geographic region you have in mind. So we do have the usual suspects here of focusing on a certain city and state, a metro area, and radius is also used pretty heavily. So if you want to, for example, kind of focus your search on Barrington, but then cast a net of maybe a 5-mile radius surrounding Barrington, that is also something you would be able to do within this database. We do have options for phones. If you want to look at different business sizes, you can also search by the number of employees, the sales volume for the company as well. Ownership is also a neat feature to look into. So if you won't know that you want to work with, say, a branch or maybe a location that is considered to be the headquarters for that company, you can certainly check on that. For me, I also like to look into different home-based businesses working in the area. So if you specifically want to target, say, the home-based business community, that is also an option for you as well as the others you see listed. Beyond that, We do have the option of looking into financial data, and we have what's called special select, so just additional search parameters here. These I don't find used too terribly often, but sometimes it is helpful, especially if you are looking for a company that maybe does have a web presence, or maybe alternatively, if you are looking for someone who does not have a web presence and you happen to design websites, that could also come in handy for you. So you can feel free to look into some of those features as well and see if any of those are of interest. And finally, the last category here we have is for exclusions. So if you want to avoid working, say, with a certain zip code or a certain area code, or whatever other industry or other search feature you see here, you do have that option still to go ahead and omit certain search parameters as well. So that really takes us through the wide variety of filters that Reference USA has to offer. And I wanted to take a moment and do just a sample search here. So within our community, of course, we are focusing upon the Barrington area. I did want to just as an example, do a quick search and see if I could focus on businesses located within the Barrington area. So that's going to be that 60010 zip code. I can actually focus upon that location by using the search tools here under geography. So I mentioned 60010 is the zip code, and I'll go ahead and search within that zip code. So I'm going to take a moment there and type that in. And you can see I also have the option to add in multiple zip codes if I wanted to extend beyond that one zip code I have listed. But for right now, I'm going to just update the count and see where I'm at with the businesses within Barrington. So here I see my record count has definitely decreased substantially. I'm still at kind of a high number here though, with over 3,000 record counts. So I will wind up needing to whittle that down further. So now I have the businesses located within the Barrington area, and I did want to mention the idea of a radius too. So if you are someone who is looking to maybe focus in on 60010, but then cast that wider net around it, this is what the radius screen would look like. So with radius, I tend to uncheck zip codes since you have that zip code option in there to cast that net anyway. You could type in that zip code as sort of that center point and then cast a radius around it. So for me, I primarily do miles. So if I wanted to do like say a 5 or 10 mile radius around 60010, I could actually type that in here under number of miles. I mentioned that for the radius as a center point, I typically use zip code. However, you can also use an address as well. So if you want to list your business address, or if you're home-based and you want to include your home address here, that's also a potential center point for you. At any rate, I do have this zip code included here, and let's see if I can whittle this down further. So I'm going to, just as an example, see if I can maybe focus on just a particular industry within Barrington. I see that I'm still over 3,000, and I am working within businesses in that 60010 zip code, but I'm going to see if I can decrease that record count further. So just as an example for our own search purposes here, I'm going to imagine that I am looking for different stores in Barrington that deal with greeting cards and see what sorts of results I can get from that. So I know that that's sort of the key product that I'm looking for. I don't happen to know off the top of my head what the exact code for that would be. So thankfully I do have this option for a business type, and I can either look and search by keyword or the industry group. I could kind of cast that net more broadly around paper goods, or be a little more specific and say I could mention like invitations or greeting cards, something to that effect. So I'm going to go ahead and check off keyword option here. And since I know I want greeting cards, I'm going to go ahead and key that in. Go ahead and do search. And I see I do have some options that did come up here. So see different manufacturers from greeting cards and additional features that sort of fit in with that keyword. But I'm going to look specifically at retail, and just imagine I want to go buy a nice greeting card. So I have that checked off, and you'll see it, the selected criteria also kind of repeat over here in that selected option. I'm going to go ahead and update my count. So that is a nice manageable number to work with here. We went from 3,000 plus records on down to 3. And at this point, I think I'm comfortable with that amount, and I'll go ahead and take a look at what sorts of results I get with that. So to look at that, I'm going to go ahead and view the results. And I do see here some options for different locations within the Barrington area that sell greeting cards. So this is not the catch-all for all the ones that happen to sell greeting cards, but these are businesses that are known to have them in supply. So if you are looking into reading more about these businesses, I mentioned you have that option to look at company profiles, and essentially you can access that by clicking on the name of the business. So just as an example, I'll take a look at the CVS here. And if you click right on the company name, you'll start to be able to access that company profile. So as mentioned, we have some basic information about the location, their their address here, their phone number and contact information. And as you scroll through, you'll see a listing of different options here, different features that really try to give you a nice, like, kind of holistic view of the business and share some information about it, whether it's the different codes, for the different products or services that they happen to offer. You could also get some basic information about the location, how many people they hire, their hours, again, who does what within that business. So it is a profile that includes quite a bit of information here that could be of use. So if that seems to work for me, or if I want to research them further, I know who I would be able to connect with at that location. I did also want to include that you can see when the record was updated last. So with this one in particular, this was last updated in February of 2020. So it is a fairly recent update, and you can always kind of look for that last updated feature if that is a concern for you and you want to see how current a given record is. So in my case here, I have 3 records that I want to export in an Excel spreadsheet or maybe in another type of file format or in an email. I mentioned that the cap on exporting the different records is about 350 a piece. So in some cases, you might wind up with multiple search results. I only have 3 at the moment, so it's a fairly quick export. But if you wind up with several pages of results, it's still pretty easy to catch and get all of those results exported. So for me, with these 3, I'm just going to check off this little box here up up here that's part of this blue tab. And that tells me I have 3 records selected, so it got all those. If you are in a spot though where you have multiple pages, just about here, you'll wind up seeing, like, page 1, 2, 3, so on. You could click on page 1, click on this little box here, it'll say it caught those records. Then you'd click on page 2 and do the same thing. You'll check that box and it'll capture those records, and so on until you have all the pages that you need, until you hit the limit, and it'll let you know if you do. But once you catch the records that you want, or if there's certain ones that you don't want, you can just go ahead and check off the ones you do want individually and leave certain ones unchecked if you need to. But regardless, if you do have the ones you want that are already checked off, you could go ahead and proceed with this download feature. So I tend to keep my records digital, but if you wanted to print them, you could also do that pretty quickly from here. It's just that print button. I tend to download for the most part though, since some of the Excel files I work with are a bit bigger, but I'll go ahead and click that download option so you can see what that looks like. So for me, I typically use an Excel format here. If you have other versions of Excel that are perhaps older, you can actually specify that you want it downloaded that way. And then you also have the level of detail as an option for you. Summary is the one that I typically go with, so that will capture all the fields that were listed in the company profile. Detailed includes all data. So with summary, it does its best to kind of group and make that final export of data a little more compact and concise, whereas detail is a much larger form and captures much more information. And finally, custom is the one that will allow you to actually just specify certain fields. So if you maybe just want an address and a phone number, you could just specify those fields. But if you're someone who's also looking for, say, executive name and information about their role in the company, so on, you can add as many of those fields as you want to your final report. So I'm just going to go ahead and leave it on these file types. So we have Excel, I'm going to leave it on the summary type of detail, and I'll go ahead and download my records. Now, if you're someone who just wants the records emailed to you for reference, you can also just email it to yourself or to someone else by clicking this email records option. For downloads, though, I'm going to go ahead and click on download records so you can see what that final summary would look like. If you do wind up having it emailed, this is still sort of the attachment style that you'd see if you went with these types of formats and detail levels. But I have my summary downloaded here. I'm going to go ahead and click on it to open it up. So I went ahead and clicked on the summary download here, and this is what the final result looked like for me. So I have my 3 records here, and I can scroll through and I see that, that the company information that I wanted is listed here. Now, within ReferenceUSA, I mentioned there are several other features here, and you'll notice as you explore some of these different sections within the database, they run with a very similar search process. You usually have that quick search feature and then an advanced search feature, which looks very similar to what we just saw in the US businesses option. You can actually look for jobs and internships within the area. So if you are a job seeker or someone looking for an internship, once you click on that, you'll notice that it's going to look very similar to the search feature we used a moment ago for businesses. Here, if I want to maybe have an internship in finance, for example, or look for a job in finance, I could include that as a potential feature. I can maybe specify Barrington as well if I want a certain location, maybe within 5 miles of the zip code. And you could also include how old the job posting is. So if I want something from within the past 2 weeks, I could also look into that. And again, you can feel free to use any of these other search parameters, but just to see what types of results we get, we'll go ahead and view our results. And I see right away I have some locations that do fit the bill, and I could go ahead and explore some of the different opportunities that they are offering by clicking on the link here and connecting with the business. I could also get into company profiles if I went back to that initial US business feature we just looked at, but this would go ahead and give me a nice listing of that, and I can also export this search to myself through email. So another feature that I find particularly helpful is US new businesses listed here, which is very similar to what we just saw in the US businesses section, except for the fact that US new businesses, of course, focuses on the businesses that are new to the area. So US new businesses, again, is nationwide. If you go into this advanced search option, again, you could see it's almost exactly the same as what we saw with the previous section of the database. But again, it is nationwide. It captures all the new businesses located throughout the US. And if you do want to focus once again on, say, a given area or a given industry, all of that is still available to you. And you could focus in on a certain zip code or a certain radius as we did before. So this will allow you again to focus on new businesses specifically. And another feature that I find helpful too is the option to have access to lists of new movers and new homeowners in the area. Once again, this is also listed as a nationwide portion of the database, but as we saw in the different business options, you also have the opportunity to once again focus on a given zip code. This would actually be particularly advantageous if you are, say, a business owner and you are looking to market specifically to individuals who happen to be new to the community and really tell them about your business and all the products and services that you have to offer. That would be a really nice way to connect with them. So as we saw before, we have a quick search feature. We also happen to have that advanced search feature as well. So you can specifically focus on the geographic area that you want to deal with for your business and for your target audience, in addition to a wide variety of other details. The final feature that I would like to point out is actually the one for the standard white pages. So this is basically just a standard lookup tool to contact information for residents throughout the US. So if you are looking for a particular individual or an executive, that is also a nice feature to fall back on in case a company profile didn't quite give you all the information you wanted. So with that being said, there's certainly a lot that you could do with ReferenceUSA. There are so many different options and avenues that we didn't get a chance to talk about, but the features that I pointed out are the ones that I found most useful in terms of my own work and in working with different businesses and job seekers in our community. Feel free, though, certainly to explore the different functions of this database. Definitely try to conduct some of your own searches just to see how the database works and potentially see how you could use this to your advantage. As mentioned, ReferenceUSA is available to you with your library card through the library homepage. Of course, I'm definitely here to support you with any questions that you may have. Really, the best way to get a hold of me right now, if you have questions specifically pertaining to ReferenceUSA, is through email at present. My email address is abochenek@balibrary.org. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have in the meantime as you interact with this database. So I certainly hope that this tutorial was useful to you and gave you a good feel for what you could do with ReferenceUSA, and will help you envision how this database might be helpful to your business and your current needs. With that being said, thank you so much for listening to this tutorial, and certainly feel free to reach out if you have any additional questions for me. Thank you so much.